Good morning. I'm Steve Kest, the National Executive Director of ACORN, and I'm here with some friends of ours. We're here to sort of celebrate the profoundly American and democratic tradition, small d democratic tradition of encouraging citizen participation and celebrating the 1.3 million new voters that we've helped register to vote this year. We have a few speakers. Let me just tell you who we're going to hear from. First, very briefly, Kevin Whalen, who is one of the coordinators of our voter registration drive. Then Reverend Gloria Swearinga, who is one of the leaders of ACORN nationally on our national board and president of Maryland ACORN. Then Enrique Peralta, a new voter who just registered. And then Bob Edgar, the president of Common Cause and former member of Congress. And then Miles Rappaport, who is the president of Demos and a former Secretary of State of Connecticut. So that'll be our order. We'll go through all the speakers first and then questions. All right, so Kevin, you want to say a few words?
My name is Kevin Whalen. I'm from Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I'm one of the organizers with ACORN who helped put together our voter registration campaign this year, which was a remarkable success in helping 1.3 million Americans, mostly low-income people, people of color, young people, the groups that had participated least in the past, applied to become registered voters. And I'm going to talk very briefly about a couple of the mechanics of doing that, and will be available for questions later on. Over 13,000 workers, mostly part-time canvassers, work to help collect voter registrations in neighborhoods in 21 states around the country. The vast majority were dedicated workers who did a great job. They worked in the hot sun, they worked in the rain, and they did something remarkable in bringing all these new voters, and saw a lot of enthusiasm, greater enthusiasm than we've ever seen before in our communities for getting involved in voting this year. A separate staff of quality control workers working for ACORN then called wherever possible the phone numbers on each of these cards to verify the information and the validity of each card. We made up to 3 attempts to reach each voter before turning the cards in. And after doing that, we put the cards in 3 piles, ones that were verified or appeared to be valid, cards that were missing some information, but that might still result in a registered voter if the Board of Elections or elections officials could obtain that missing information, and cards that were problematic, either because we already knew they were a duplicate or they were suspicious, looked like they could be fake, or that we discovered were fake for some reason. And then, by state law or good legal advice, we're required to turn all of those cards, including the problematic pile of cards, in to boards of elections on a regular basis, week by week, in states across the country. And so because the cards that our quality control program identified as problematic were such, we put a note on top of them that said, these are the problematic cards. Any time, and it's a relatively handful of times out of many dedicated workers, but out of 13,000 workers, there were inevitably a few who decided they tried to pad their hours by duplicating a card and filling out another one or making up a name. If we discovered this and through our calls or looking at the cards, we'd not only turn that information over, but turn the information that we had about that former employee, because they'd been fired by that point, to elections officials and ask for their help in prosecuting that person. It's now many of those problematic card packages that have a note on top of them that said, these are the problematic cards, as opposed to this larger stack, which is the good one, that we're now hearing about and hearing distorted in many partisan attacks. The upshot of which is of the attacks is to try to cast aspersions on or inhibit the remarkable turnout and the remarkable interest in hundreds of thousands and millions of Americans who are looking to vote for the first time this year. And ACORN's not going to let that happen.
Reverend Swearinga.
Good morning, and thank you all for being here. My name is Reverend Gloria Swearinga. I'm chair of Maryland ACORN and head of its anti-predatory lending activity. As many of you may know, ACORN stands for a community of associations organized for reform now. We are made up of 400,000 low to moderate income families in over 100 cities throughout America. And in our attempt to involve as many as possible in this wonderful, exciting experience called democracy, we inspire them to register to vote. For whom you vote is a matter for you and your conscience to resolve, but we are convinced that we have a unique opportunity to make those wonderful things that are laid out in our Constitution, the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, become a reality by casting one's vote, because every vote counts. Every voice is important, and it's going to take every one of us to build an America in which we can all continue to take pride. Thank you.
Now, Enrique Peralta, one of the new voters.
Good morning. Good morning, folks. My name is Enrique Peralta, and I just became a U.S. citizen this past September 25th. My swearing-in ceremony and actually my test were the same day. I went there with my father, took my test for citizenship, and that very day went upstairs and to the same building to be sworn in. One of the main things that the people there, the officials swearing us in, telling us about what it meant to become a new U.S. citizen, was that our primary, one of our most important rights that we were getting that day was the right to vote. That same day, most of the time they have volunteers waiting outside after you're finished swearing in and becoming a new citizen in order for you to fill out your voter registration form and go out and participate as soon as possible. That very day, actually, the volunteers were somewhere else. I'm not exactly sure where. But I took the next day off, or probably a couple days later, and went to my Fairfax County voter registration office, filled out my form, and within a few days, I got my card as a new citizen, as a new registered voter to vote in the 11th District. Now, I take this right very seriously, and what I've heard and what I've found is that people are making voter registration to be a dirty thing. They're making people think that it might not be important, that there's something that's going to be wrong with it, that you're doing something wrong by just going out and registering and doing your duty. Now, I'm proud to be a registered voter with my voter registration card and to vote this upcoming election day. And with that, I'm very much looking forward to vote and making our leaders accountable to make sure that all Americans have the right to vote, that have the responsibility to vote, and to protect that right. Thank you very much.